It is a little after 6 a.m. Today is Saturday. This is what pretty much every Saturday or every weekend long run morning looks like for me. With my long runs, I like to start by just getting something in my body in the morning. So even if I'm not hungry and I know that I'm gonna need that energy on the long run, I make sure I get something down. So easiest thing for me to get down, and it sounds really boring, is saltine crackers, which are perfect for running because it's just carbs and sodium, which is kind of the best thing you can do before going out on a longer run. Throw some honey on it for some extra carbs, and then I have an electrolyte mix. And my current favorite electrolyte mix is Tailwind, and this is the caffeinated version, so has a little bit of caffeine, get your day started. So once I've eaten, I kind of just hang out, and I know that pre-run meal was pretty boring, but in its boringness, my body makes up for that in its unpredictability, because I'll wait anywhere from an hour to over 2 hours at some times for everything to kind of, digest. And that's also why I don't drink coffee before I run. I know a lot of people do that, but my body has just one too many, two too many times let me know that it is not a fan when I drink coffee too close to going to a run. I've had to sort of hobble back to my house too many times at this point. And so we're just gonna hang out here for an hour or two before we get going on a long run, and then afterward talk about why the long run is so important no matter what distance you race at. Here we are, out on the first long run since the marathon. I got going a little after like 7:30, so not too long to digest this morning. This was actually more of like a medium long run during my last training block, so it's nice to be getting some double-digit mile runs back in the system, but close to 2 miles at this point. Whenever it's not a long run workout, or regardless of what run it is, I like to take it out easy. So usually like to get the body used to the work it's about to do, kind of warm up pace before we progress down to like an easy to moderate pace. So just easy, approaching the 2 mile mark, running up a hill right now. And we'll check back in then. Degrees, about 10 mile an hour winds today. Almost at the turnaround spot. Man, it's crazy how quickly you lose fitness after, a reverse taper after a race. This pace felt so easy a month ago, a couple weeks ago. Now it's definitely moved down to like moderate pace. So you might be wondering why are you doing a long run? You're coming off a big race. You're not really training for anything. Point of doing a long run at this point in time? Why not just run easy, short every day? Well, that's what we're going to talk about when we get back. There are a lot of benefits
sort of carrying on with your long runs year round, even if you're not currently training for any race. So there is 14 miles banked. Did a nice little progression run. You can see somewhere over here the splits in the other stats, but we're talking about long runs. This was my first long run back after the marathon, and it may call to question why I'm doing a long run in the first place. What's the point of doing long runs year round if you're not necessarily training for a race year round? So maybe the best thing to do first is to define what a long run is. A long run will typically be a run that's somewhere between 30 and 33% of your weekly mileage. So say you're somebody who runs 40 miles a week. Your long run might be anywhere from 12 to 13, 14 miles. If you're somebody who runs 50 miles a week, that may be anywhere from a 15-mile long run to a 16 or 17-mile long run. If you run 60 miles a week, maybe it's anywhere from 18 to 21 miles. You get the point. But obviously that differs depending on context. If you're somebody who typically only runs about 30, 35, 40 miles a week and you're training for a marathon, you're obviously going to include a marathon specific long run that will probably peak at 20 or 22 miles somewhere in your training block. So in that case, the rate at which your long run compares to your total weekly mileage may vary. Now we know what a long run is. It's that third of your weekly mileage, significantly longer run you'll go on a weekly basis. So what is it doing for you? Obviously, there's a ton of science out there
about building blood capillaries and blood volume and more mitochondria and
all that stuff, but ultimately it's building your aerobic foundation, making you a stronger runner, a more efficient runner, and ultimately a more confident runner. Because say you're somebody training for something that's a little bit longer distance, like a half marathon, a full marathon, or even longer than that, going on a long run is a great way for you to not only get your legs under you, get your body used to completing that longer distance on a regular basis, while still giving your body adequate time for recovery, but it's also going to build your mental toughness. It's going to allow you to cross a barrier where you know you are able to cover that distance, and maybe you're even able to push that speed a little bit more over the course of that distance. So long runs not only are incredibly physically beneficial with increasing your aerobic base, your aerobic output, making you a strong, efficient runner, but mentally it's going to get you to amazing places when it comes to building your confidence over any number of distances. Now, I absolutely love the long run. It's my favorite run of every week. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because my favorite distance has become the marathon. So those runs that range anywhere from 18 up to 22 to 23 miles really allows me a rehearsal of sorts. It gives me an opportunity to test out which gels, which fuel work with my body, which ones don't, which ones sit in my stomach well, which ones make me feel the best, which ones replenish me the best, and sort of how I feel taking in that nutrition at race pace or over a longer distance. Long runs are a great way for you to practice what you plan on doing on race day in a much more low pressure setting. It's also important to keep in mind that every run has a purpose, and that purpose is usually driven by context. So if you're currently training for a marathon, as your race day approaches, you're probably going to increase both the length and the intensity of your long runs. But if you're in the off season, you can still do long runs. You probably shouldn't be doing every long run super hard, all out at race pace. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing every long run at a jogging, easy, or even recovery pace. You should sort of periodize the way you look at your race calendar, your training calendar, and your off-season calendar, and plot out which long runs are going to be at a more up-tempo or race goal pace or a long run workout, and which ones are just going to be at an easy or steady pace. It's important not to do too many long runs at a really hard pace back to back. That may lead to injuries, overuse, or burnout. You want to make sure that you are thinking about the intention and the purpose of each long run that you do. What are some benefits to doing long runs year round? One of the biggest benefits to doing long runs year round is that you'll always be ready for anything. If If a friend asks you to jump into a race with them, maybe you're not going all out in that race, but you have that aerobic base because you have continued to do long runs year round. Again, not every long run needs to be this race day preparation, hardcore hard workout. As long as you're getting those miles in, giving yourself adequate time to recover, and thinking about the intention of your long runs, you can do so in a healthy manner and continue to do so year round, whether you're training for a race at the time or not. And that's probably the biggest benefit to it all. When you get to a training block, whether that's a half marathon or a marathon, you're not going to have to take as much time to build up to those 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 mile long runs if you're doing some long runs year round. So if you continue to do 14, 15, 16 mile long runs during your regular off-season weeks, you're going to be ready come your marathon training block to jump right into getting some very quality long runs in, so that you don't have to take all of this time in your training block to build up to those longer, more intense long run sessions. So, as you can probably tell, I love the long run. It is something I love to do in the middle of a 70 or 80 mile week during a marathon buildup, and it's something I love to do in the off season, something I look forward to every single week, and I'm just grateful to be able to do in the first place. How do you feel about long runs? I know people who absolutely hate them and people who treat them like they're church on the weekend. Where do you fall on that spectrum, and what are your strategies and thoughts when it comes to the long run? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Peace.